Hi, good afternoon. We're going to get started in just a second as everybody starts to get their audio set up here. We'll get started in just a minute. Okay, for those of you that are just signing on now, we'll get started in a minute when everybody's audio is all set and ready to go. Okay. All right, good afternoon. Welcome to our first ever virtual Women in Leadership webinar. We're so excited to be able to bring this to you again. It's been a couple months since we had our Women in Leadership series, and now we are shifting and we're excited to offer this event virtually. So hopefully everybody is at the comfort of their own desk, perhaps eating lunch as we would if we were in person. And we're going to get this event started now. We're so excited to have so many fabulous women on this panel this afternoon as we get ready to learn about how our society has changed considerably and how individuals are working to prosper, endure, and overcome some of the obstacles we are facing today. Before we get started, I'd like to recognize our sponsors: Independence Blue Cross, SAP, Mean Mind Today, AmeriHealth Caritas, Bars, Gowie, Amen and Foltz, Franklin Mint Federal Credit Union, WSFS Bank, Trinity Health, TD Bank, Crozier Keystone Health System, Trinity Home Health, Trinity Mercy Home Health, and Trinity Mercy Life. So as I mentioned, we have panelists and we have a phenomenal facilitator today. Our panelists are Aimee-Kate Braconnier. She's the Vice President and Executive Director of Catholic Community Choir. Melissa Pernell, Learning Manager for Independence Blue Cross. And Pam McCormick, who is the Director of Legislative and Community Affairs at SEPTA. And our facilitator today is none other than Debra Rockey, who goes by Rockey, and she's the Lead Consultant, Culture, Change, and Engagement Team at Trinity Health. So Rockey, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for all of your work that you've done on this event, and we're looking forward to hearing from everybody.
Thank you, Trish, and thank you to the Delaware County Chamber as well. I am thrilled to be with you on this beautiful day. And I used to say, I eat change for breakfast, but now I can say I eat change for lunch too. So thank you for being part of this Lunch and Learn. And for today, we're going to take 1 hour of our lives and really take the time to focus on this emerging community of women in leaders. And before we hear from our panelists, we're just going to take a moment and ground ourselves in some foundational change concepts. And as we're going through those, we also invite you to chat in questions you have or reactions or ideas. We always want to hear that as well. So with that, let's start talking about change. And the first slide we have to share with you today talks about the different types of change that we actually have. So there's a lot of change going on in the world, and even change is changing. So it's no longer developmental change, like we're learning something. Many of us are learning how to bake again, and that's an example of developmental change. We're also not in transitional change, where we're moving from one version of our cell phone to another version, and we're learning new functions of that. This is also going beyond what we call transformational change, where we're changing our behaviors and our mindsets. It's something even more than that. In fact, it's very hard to just draw these simple pictures that we see above in the before. Now it starts to get really messy. In fact, it's what's referred to as VUCA change, a military term that stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And the picture isn't so pretty. It's very comminuted. We refer to change as being disruptive, It's punctuated, it's definitely not planned for, and it's so continuous and overlapping that we barely finish one change when something new comes up and we're starting a brand new change. But all that being said, that doesn't mean that we can't learn, adapt, and emerge even stronger because of these types of change. I was attending a webinar the other day and saw this sign of the times, so to speak, that you'll see on the next slide. And it sort of made me laugh, even though it's a serious time that we're in. So this was on a ProPsy webinar. Now, ProPsy happens to be a society of and professional organization for change practitioners. It stands for professional science. And Tim Creasy, who created this slide, he is the chief innovation officer for ProPsy. And I just thought it really captured, you know, this road that we're traveling down. And it is business as unusual. So yes, we have COVID. We have to acknowledge that we're in this time, and it's illuminating the social injustice that we have going on in the world. We've probably all witnessed colleague transitions and unemployment, and our school systems going through much transition as well. But again, that ability to learn from this, adapt, and emerge even stronger is what we want to focus on. And so let's take a moment and look at how we as individuals show up in change. So on the next slide, you'll see there are 3 basic questions that everyone asks as they're going through change. And the first one is, it's very natural for us as humans to go, well, what about me? What's in it for me, right? The good old radio station, WIIFM. People always, before they move on, to know, well, is this a change that's going to impact or is good for my team or my company or my organization, or do we have what it takes to be successful with it? It's always going to start with the individual first. So a simple model that we use is this next slide, which shows thoughts, behaviors, and results. And it's very simple, but it's a really good solid model to talk about change. And as you're going through change, you know, what used to work no longer does necessarily. And so you need new results. And we know in order to have new results, we have to start doing things differently. So we need new behaviors. And most people can do new behaviors for a while. But if we don't make them sustainable, if we don't make them stick, if people don't really have a change of thought as to why am I doing this, what is being asked of me, and how do I feel about it, then that's where the true work of change and sustainable change happens. So it sounds so easy. Well, okay, new results, I'll change my behaviors and I'll do some thinking on it so that I have a different mindset on that. But it's not as easy. As we see in the next slide, it's not like flicking a light switch. We actually have to create some capacity in our heads, in our minds, and in our hearts in order to take on those different feelings, those different thoughts, and those different mindsets. And so in order to do that, we need to create space. We need to set aside, you know, time to really take in, why am I doing this change? How do I feel about it? How am I thinking about it? And simple methods of doing that through communication, through conversation, through holding space for others and listening. Some people like to meditate, but those are all great methods of creating space and capacity and holding it for one another. Even what we're doing today with the Chamber is helping to create some capacity so that we can think about things differently and really internalize how are we going to look and feel differently so that we can really have those sustainable behaviors which will create the new results. So if we take that knowledge of how we react to change as an individual, and now start thinking, well, what about as an organization? We all work with a lot of people. So when we start to look at that in the next slide of how does that impact an organization? I love this quote: every organization is perfectly designed to achieve the results it's currently getting. So unless we intentionally think about how are we changing, we absolutely have to do that in order to meet the resistance. So in our organization, we use this, we call it a formulaic methodology, which is a big word for saying we use this simple formula. And we always start with resistance. And resistance isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? Resistance is what keeps things in place and stable. But in times of change, sometimes we have to overcome the resistance in order to move it forward. So we always make sure when we're talking about change and working through change that we have these three core elements defined and talked about. The first being D, which stands for dissatisfaction or data. Well, why should I want to change? What is the data telling us about the reason we have to change? And so understanding the why is critically important. The V stands for vision. So what does it look like in the future? What does the vision for it look like? And tell me about that, paint it for me. The F stands for first steps. Give me like the visible, tangible things we're gonna do to move it forward. And we know from our early days of math that if any of these is missing, if any of these is zero, that 0 times 0 is 0. And so 0 will never be greater than R or over to be able to overcome the resistance. So we want to make sure that we always understand the why, the what, and the how we're going to address the change. So as we move that forward as leaders, if we go to the next slide, another really great thought to keep in mind: as leaders go, so goes the change. You know, we always say nothing speaks louder than the shadow of a leader. So how do we show up as women in leadership who are leading others through change? And so we want to make sure that we reflect on what we bring as leaders as well. So if we look at the ABCs of leaders and just try to keep it very simple, ABCs, active and visible. We as women leaders in change want to make sure that this is not a time to hunker down and hide and just let it pass. It'll all be fine. Somebody will figure it out. Now, this is the time when we are active and visible. We're rounding. We're going to the Gemba. We're asking people, how's it going? And being seen. The B stands for build a coalition. So a group of trusted partners of like-minded people and diverse thinking that can join together in helping with the cause of the change, to be there and helping to support. And I look forward to hear from our women leaders on the panel today how they are doing the A and the B, as well as the C, the communication. So they always say that the top 2 critical success factors of change are to have an effective leader, that sponsorship, that person who's really going to say, I'll be accountable for it. And the second thing being the change communication. So how well are you keeping people informed? What's the frequency of it? How visible is that communication? So those ABCs really help in moving it forward and keeping it in mind as women and leaders. So very helpful in navigating the waters of change. And, you know, I'll just sort of leave you with a personal story. My daughter and I, as we were navigating the rivers of Colorado, we thought it'd be a great idea to learn how to fly fish. And so went to an outfitting place and hired a guide, and they gave us the garb, you know, the waders that are sort of the boots and the pants all in one. They go up to your waist, got the suspenders on. And when we came out of the dressing room, the guide looked at me and just gasped. And of course, my mind goes right for that. I don't look very good in these waders at all. I'm sure they're really tight around the thighs. And before I could even make an excuse for how I looked, the guide said, I am so excited to have 2 women to take fly fishing. Oh my gosh, what a gift this is. Women make the very best fly fishermen. And the reason is because, one, they are intuitive. They really know where to look for the fish. They know where to look, where things are going to happen. They feel that as an innate sense. And secondly, they are patient. They do not force it. They let it happen. And as I was thinking about that, yeah, those are 2 great characteristics, intuition and patience. And the same thing that makes women great fly fishermen also makes them great leaders in change. So today, we're going to navigate the waters with 3 of our panelists and let them share with us their experiences, their abilities, some of the great traits they bring with them into this world. And so let's start with our first question. And again, we welcome Aimee-Kate, Melissa, and Pamela to our panel. So I'm going to start with the first question. And, you know, so many of us during this time of change are working from home, or perhaps we have employees who are working from home, but it really does change the work experience. So I'm curious to know how work from home environment, has it presented any challenges to you? Or maybe on the flip side of that, it's presented opportunities. And Aimee-Kate, I'm going to start with you for this question.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. It's so nice to be with so many wonderful women this afternoon and everyone else who is viewing this great opportunity to discuss change today. So I hope you have a great experience and from learning from all of us today and take something away from this great experience. But for me, you know, in talking about change and how this experience being at home during COVID-19, how it's really impacted me is quite different than most people. For me, I was used to working 5-6 days a week, 10-12 hours, being hands-on with people all day. And when COVID-19 hit, my world just stopped because we couldn't do what we do as an organization. I work for Catholic Community Choir, and we are a children's theater organization. So for me, we are on stage all the time. That's what we do, and that's how we serve our community. And so we immediately had to stop really our operations, and we had 2 shows coming up, and those performances stopped. So I went home and thought, what do we do now? And what do I do that I can't be on the stage, around the stage, building a performance, and how can I take what has been given to me and adjust? And so it's been both positive and negative experience. I know it's been that way for so many, but the positives for me is that I had more time to really think about things that needed to be focused on in moving forward with the changes that were coming our way. You know, instead of panicking and pausing, I had to think about the many opportunities that could come our way. So I was able to evaluate so many potential plans. But on the personal side, I was able to spend time with, you know, people really important to me that I don't get to see all the time because I'm usually not home. And so for me, that was such a gift. The one thing that I thought was really important is that being a young professional and a woman, I didn't have a family to take care of through this time. And there's so many people out there in the same situation as me. And we were kind of bombarded by, you know, how this has impacted everyone from a family perspective. And I think it's important to identify that we weren't all in the same situation. And many of us were taking care of somebody or someone, but it might not have been an entire family. And it was still challenging, and we still had our own obstacles to overcome through this time. And it was just as important to talk about too. And for me, having that experience was very different than many other women that I consulted with through this time, and it allowed me to grow a little bit and spend some time focusing on how I could navigate this change and the obstacles presented.
Thank you, Aimee-Kate. Yeah, fascinating how each of us are so unique in how we experience this, and that's what makes us all together, is that we are all unique in what we bring to this. So, Melissa, love to hear from you on how is the work from home environment presented, opportunities and challenges?
Thank you, Rockey, and thank you to the wonderful ladies of the Delaware Chamber of Commerce for inviting me. So as you can see, I am home now. So it definitely has been a big shift. I work in learning and development for Independence Blue Cross in the corporate university. I'm a people person, so I was used to interacting with people all the time, similar to Aimee-Kate, not exactly in the theater, on stage, but it definitely was a huge transition. And it really forced me to think about things differently, right? So there was a long time where I was waiting for things to get back to normal. And then there had to come a shift where I realized that normal probably wasn't going to come back. So I think the opportunity and the gift was recognizing that things are going to be different and having to really take the time to embrace it and say, okay, so what does my world look like now? How will I connect with people now? And it definitely pushed me to figure out ways to do things differently, that are things that even once we go back into the office, I'll be a better virtual facilitator. I'll be able to connect with people on a different level if I ever work for a global organization where people all over the world. In addition to home, I have children, right? So similar to Aimee-Kate's response about we have to think that it affects everyone's differently, I had to think about home life differently, right? So, you know, the kids are not going to be, I have to let it go that the kids are going to, they're going to sleep in a little bit later, where I used to go crazy if they weren't up at a certain time, and that the house is not going to be perfectly clean because you just can't do everything. So I think if nothing else, I've developed new skills. I had to start to embrace my work in a very different way. And even how I lead at home and just learning to let things go. And to Aimee-Kate's point earlier, just bonding with the children, where at one point it was like, oh my God, how am I going to balance all these things? But learning that it's okay to say, like, you know what, I may have to reschedule this meeting, or I may need to, you know, maybe my lunch break is, you know, just taking a ride in the car for 20 minutes just to you know, just to take a breather. A significant transition, but I think to your point, Rockey, in your presentation, learning to embrace it, realizing that it's going to be different, that, you know, once we get on the other side, it's going to look differently, and that whatever skills that we develop when we learn to embrace it will definitely help us on the other end. So absolutely was a shift.
Great, thank you for that, Melissa. And you know, you reminded me of something when we go through change. Bridges' model of transition, if anyone's familiar with that, really talks about the former change hasn't ended, and we're not quite in the new. We're in this real transition, almost like a neutral period. Sometimes we call that the land of no longer and not yet. And it's one of the most creative times it can be when people are trying to figure out. And so you definitely put your creativity to good use as you're going through those transitions. Nice. Pam, we'd love to hear from you. How's the work from home environment presenting challenges and opportunities?
Well, thanks, Rockey. I guess I'd like to say that 2020 started off with a lot of change at SEPTA. We began the year with a brand new general manager, a woman, Leslie Richards. So thrilling to have her lead us beginning with this year. But she was only here 2 months, and then COVID came, and of course that marked lots of change here. SEPTA was never a place where anyone worked from home. We always came into the office. It was very traditional, and all of a sudden we found ourselves rushing and trying to figure out how everyone could work at home. And I just have to say how proud I've been that we transitioned so quickly, and everyone who could work at home began to work at home. Of course, SEPTA, a majority of our employees are essential workers, so they're driving people and carrying people to work and to essential jobs. So a lot of our workforce continues to come into work every day. But for those of us who did work at home, I think everyone was very efficient and effective. So very proud of that. And I guess in my role in government affairs, I have to say how proud I've been of organizations like the Chamber of Commerce and governments and elected officials and their staff, because they adjusted very quickly to holding public hearings online and continuing all the work of government while working remotely too. So I think I've been very proud. All the stakeholders who I work with really have adjusted to this.
That's beautiful. And you're really pulling out an element that's so key. I'm hearing change upon change, new leadership, new ways of doing transportation. And yet I heard a lot of celebration in what you talked about. And when we know we're trying to change behaviors and go in new directions, how important celebrating and that positive reinforcement. So good for SEPTA. Yeah. So you are all leaders. You're leaders, you're women leaders, and you're women leaders in times of change. And so I'd like to hear a little bit about how you personally lead change within your teams or within your organization. And what are you finding most challenging about that? And specifically, if you could talk about how do you stay connected with people, your teams and your organization, because we're all physically distancing. So how do you lead? What are the challenges? How do you stay connected? And Melissa, if you'd start us off on this one.
Sure. Thanks, Rockey. I think this is such a relevant question right now, especially when you are, we're leading diverse teams, right? So the first thing I think about when I think about leading a team through change, regardless of what the change is recognizing that everybody is different, right? So every team member is different. Their family situation is different. Their home makeup is different. And so it's important, even before a change comes, to making sure that we're connected with our team. So we have some sort of an awareness of how it might impact them, and taking the time to pause, right? Because we know work is, it's fast and moving at a fast pace, but sometimes it's so important to just stop and pause and find out how our teams are doing, because in those conversations is when you learn how things are affecting them. So I think the first is just recognizing that everyone's an individual, and it takes intention, right, to stop and to pause. And especially for leaders, I think what happens a lot is that we are usually privy to some sort of a change before it comes. So by the time it gets to the point of letting our teams know of the change, we've already moved through, right, that continuum a little bit. So it's also taking a moment to step back and remember, how did you feel when you first learned about that change, right? And then having the empathy and the compassion to recognize that my teams need time. We're going to get through it differently. Some are going to, go through it pretty quickly. Some are going to have a harder time. And although there is some balance you have to have with leading the team as a group, but you also have to make sure that you're taking the time to invest and work with everyone individually. So I think the biggest piece is again, just remembering that we as human beings, so thinking about, how did this change affect me? How am I going through? And then appreciating that people need their time to work through it as well. And just remembering that we're all people. And generally, when people feel that their leaders are genuinely invested in their best interest, that they can trust them, they will follow you, right? So it really is just making sure that you're doing your due diligence to be genuine and to be authentic and really care about your people and how they're getting through it. And then realistically, in corporate America, balancing that with, I care, I want to be here, I'm here to support you, because we together have to achieve these organizational goals, right? So it's finding that balance between not going too far into becoming a friend and forgetting about the business results you have to achieve, and then also recognizing I need to make sure I'm taking care of my people the best way that I can so that we can achieve these results together. So be there, be empathetic, be intentional. It takes a lot of emotional energy and it can be exhausting, right? Especially if you have larger teams. But personally, I think that the investment is well worth it on the other end to help to get them through the change together.
Yeah, perfect change leadership. And again, going back to that, there's the change, the announcement of what's changing, and then there's the internalization of the change. And everybody does that at their own rate, which you so astutely pointed that out. So So great, meeting the people where they're at. And, you know, leaders forget that a lot, that they're way ahead of the change curve. They've had a lot more time to process. So excellent advice to keep in mind. That's great. Pam, let's move to you next. How is leading in remote times presenting any challenges, and how do you stay connected?
So I think one of the slides you talk about communication, and I think as Melissa said too, communication is so important. I think what we try to do is have regular check-ins with our team and with our staff. And I think these virtual meetings are great too, because you get to see each other's faces and see reactions. So to me, they remain very effective. I think as a manager, I've always felt like my primary responsibility was making sure that my team had the support and the resources that they need to do their job. So I think these regular check-ins with everybody to make sure that they have all the materials necessary to do their jobs remotely. I think that that's so important. And I think my job, I feel like I have an internal job and an external job. And again, I think these virtual calls, they help me so much with my external responsibilities, because when you try to meet with elected officials, like everyone has said already, it's all those face-to-face and the personal interactions that we can't do right now. But at least with the virtual Zoom calls, you get to see each other's faces. You remember, oh, I haven't seen them in a while. But I really can't get over how effective these calls are.
That's excellent. And I have heard from some leaders that they've said with having that regular cadence of a call, of a virtual call, and checking in with their employees, that they're actually talking to them more often than they were when they were in the office, because everybody had different schedules. This is a time to convene. So great. Thank you for your leadership in making that happen and recognizing how critical communication is. Aimee-Kate, what are you seeing from your side?
So for me, obviously we've talked a lot about how important communication has been through this whole time. And I think in addition to communication, being a really good listener has been so important during this time. You know, we spend so much time talking out situations and possible scenarios that sometimes we forget we need to listen to other people. And, you know, that coalition that you talked about, Rockey, like building that coalition and really listening to other people's feedback, because we're going to have to rely on one another to overcome some of the challenges and changes we're facing. But, you know, we talk also about how as the leaders, we are in front of this, and sometimes we don't realize that. But initially, right from the start, I said to myself, there's 3 things I need to focus on to make sure that we can survive here. The first one was I have to believe in myself. And I know it sounds so cliche, but every day I had to remind myself that what I have done and what I have gone through in my young career has, you know, I believed in myself, and that's why I'm where I'm at today. The second thing was that every day I had to accept my current situation. It wasn't going to change. It wasn't like it was miraculously going to get better, but I had to keep accepting it and remind myself that I was going to accept it. And then the third thing was that I wasn't going to let fear, especially fear during COVID-19, stop me in my tracks and throw my hands up and give up. And once I started reminding myself of those 3 things each day, I said to my team, we need to implement this all together. We all need to believe in ourselves. We all need to continue to accept the current situation. And we can't let the fear of continuing what we do best stop us. It's going to change and it's going to look different, but we need to be on the same page. And so that helped me. And I think it also helped my team now that we're back together and we're starting to feel a little bit of a new normal for now. And that's totally been helpful through leading change this whole time for me.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That was just an excellent play of that caption we saw, as the leader goes, so goes the change. So we realize the shadow of the leader is such a critical part of leading change. And that's how you do it. Beautiful, beautiful. All right, for our next question, boy, we have so much going on in the world, right? We have COVID. Everybody knows that. That is not a news flash. You know, the illumination of social injustice is happening. The reductions in our workforce that we're struggling with. You know, and we still have things like climate change, and you know, there's been changes in leadership. You know, but again, we don't need to focus on that. Are there any silver linings in this world of change and all these different types of change? Where are the silver linings in it? So Pam, any thoughts on that?
I guess silver linings in all of this. I think we're still waiting. I think we all can't wait to move into recovery. I think everybody in our region wants to come back better and stronger. Been very impressed with the groups that have come together in Delaware County and in Greater Philadelphia to make sure that when we recover, we're doing it in the right way. We're lifting all boats. We're making sure that everyone is included. So I think that all the attention that's being paid to social justice and equality for all and fairness to all, I think it's important that those conversations are taking place right now so that when we do focus and make decisions in our recovery, we're making them to benefit everybody.
Nice. Yeah, same question. Let's go to Aimee-Kate.
So I work with a lot of children, from preschoolers to high schoolers to people in college and post-college, and the conversations we've been able to have, especially through these past few months, have just been really wonderful and honest, open, truthful, and most of all respectful. And you know, as a leader in my community, it's really important to me that my members and the people I'm surrounded with believe in their ability to change the world and know that we believe that they can do that too. And I think some of these conversations that we've all had through these past few months are so important so that everyone feels that their voice is being heard. And, you know, we do performances, that's what we do. And we spend a lot of time on the stage, and we always try to connect whatever performance we're doing to the theme in that show, or, you know, identifying those different themes and talking about them openly. As a side note, kind of funny, we're focused on Shrek, the musical, right now. So if you've seen Shrek, you know that it has an array of characters, and you know, it talks about a lot of the fairy tale creatures we've all heard about through our years, you know, especially as young children, the books we've read, the movies we've seen. And it's really been eye-opening for us as an organization, because we were able to take the characters in Shrek and talk about social justice and talk about how everyone is unique and everyone's different. And, you know, one of the songs talks about what makes us special, makes us strong, and driving home that kind of that song for everyone, that just because we're different, it makes us strong, and it makes us have many gifts and talents that we can share with one another. And, you know, working with this younger age group has really helped, I think, enable some great conversations, and really respectful ones, which I'm so proud to be behind that, and see the youth of our community step up and continue to think, I can make a difference in this world, and know that they're supported here within our organization and beyond.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I think Shrek is going to be mandatory viewing for my team after what you just said. That's so many great words of wisdom with that. And you know, there is multiple types of change going on, and what I'm hearing all three of you say is the ability to heighten the level of awareness of what is going on. And in all three of your organizations, you're making such connections of change, right? Of how one thing relates to another, and it's making it stronger and being able to tie those things together. All right, did we get to everyone in that question?
Yes, so I haven't spoken. Aimee-Kate, I just want to say thank you for the work that you do. That is amazing, and I think we all know it really starts with our children. If we need that, if we want the next generation to be better, it starts with our children. And the conversations I've been having to have with my children have been tough lately. So having a village, right? So if you were my child's teacher in camp direct, I would be so thankful that there's another voice that's sharing as well. And I would agree that there's a couple silver linings. One is that the conversation is happening, right? So it's very unfortunate that the world almost had to be on fire in order for people to really pay attention. But I think the combination of people having to stay home and these things happening forced everyone to tune into what was going on. So at a bare minimum, that the conversation is happening. We have a long way to go, but I think that it has opened eyes for people that maybe sometimes we had an easy distraction from it, right? Some people didn't have to pay attention to it. And I think with COVID specifically and all these changes, I think as long as you embrace it and are open to it, you will always come out better on the other side. There's a new skill we've learned or a new appreciation. To Pam's point, I think everyone will so appreciate small things like just going to the park without a mask on and being able to travel freely without fear. Will have such a greater appreciation for one another. And I continue to hear people saying like how much more connected they felt to their families in this time, because we had to rally around one another. So definitely lots of silver linings there.
Yeah, excellent silver linings. And thank you all three for sharing. And especially, talking about the younger generation. And so even when this is over, so to speak, we know that we'll be seeing the impacts and effect of this time for long times to come, and maybe multiple generations. And so, just getting stronger in our change abilities, right? And building what I call change muscle. So it's not getting over the change. It's like becoming really agile and nimble and being able to say, is that all you got? Because I got some good change muscle going on, and now I can handle it, and I can learn to appreciate, and I can celebrate, and I'm not going to take things for granted. So thank you all three for sharing that. Now it's time to get a little personal. So we really want to hear, because everyone's looking for great ideas on this. How do you personally renew yourself, recharge yourself, reground yourself, right? What works for you, and that you might share with our listening audience as well. And Aimee-Kate, I think we're back to you on this one.
Great. So for me, being able to refresh, recharge a bit during this time has been probably my favorite thing about being at home and being presented with all these challenges. It's really important that we all take time for ourselves. And I know it's cliche and we say that often, take time for ourselves, but I think we've all had an opportunity in some way or another to carve out that 20, 30 minutes for you, whatever it may be. For me, it was walking my dog more than I get to on a normal day and enjoying the day, the nicer days as it started to get warm. And just really trying to spend that time focused on me and checking out and not feeling bad about checking out. I think we've talked a little bit about how working from home, we've all been working nonstop. It's harder to leave. Instead of leaving your office, you're accessible all the time. People can get in touch with you because we all have moved completely virtual. So for me, I kind of made it a little bit of a rule for myself to be able to check out, at a specific time, take that walk that I wanted to with my dog or my fiance, try to spend some time planning my wedding, and make sure that I made that a priority. And that just helped me sleep better and, wake up the next day feeling proud of myself that I did something for me and that I didn't always get to do. And that was important.
Beautiful. Yeah, just a side note, I'm walking your dog. I have heard from the veterinarians of America that dogs are the healthiest they've ever been in history because they're getting well walked, well fed, and getting lots of social time with their owners. So another silver lining. But those are some great things to recognize in yourself and also have other people reflect on as well. Melissa, how about you? Renewing, refreshing, recharging, what works?
I'm still working on it, Rocky. I would definitely admit, pre-COVID, even pre-COVID, I'm a planner. I am, just diligent in everything. So I probably would never have given myself a good grade in self-care previously. But now I think having to work and have the kids at home at the same time, I try to approach it the same way I usually did, and it just didn't work, right? It was just way too stressful. So I would say it's just be kind to yourself. I think we are, especially if you are trying to continue your life in the same manner that you did before, especially if you have children, it's just not going to happen, right? It's not going to work, whether it's children, your dogs, your fiance, whatever the case is. I think we have to really be kind to ourselves and learn to say, like, it's okay, right? It's okay. I think sometimes I can speak for is that we feel guilty, right, if we take some time to ourselves. But I've learned to say, like, you know what, it's okay for me to ask my 16-year-old to watch the 4-year-old while I just drive around for an hour just in my car just to get some peace and quiet. And then it's okay to ask someone to reschedule a meeting if it's not urgent and I need an hour in between meetings to breathe and mentally recharge. But I think it really is reframing our brains to recognize that our self-care is important in order to be good to other people. And I know that I've recognized whenever I do take that time to take lunch by myself or do something, I'm in a better mood, right? So it benefits other people. And it's so funny, my calendar quote of the day, and I'll leave you with this because it's so perfect. It says, the byproduct of getting your own life under control is that you become a more present, able, kind, and happy person for everyone else. Again, since it benefits others, it's not purely selfish after all. So I think sometimes we think it's selfish, to do things for ourselves, but it's really not. It's so important to love ourselves. So I would just say, be kind to yourself, and it is okay to take the time for you so that way you can come back better. But I'm still working on it.
Yeah, yeah, it's a work in progress and progressing nicely. And thank you, Melissa, for that reminder about self-care and how important it is and the benefits it has to all of us. That's excellent. Pam, how about yourself? What are some of the things you do?
With what everyone said. Walking the dog, absolutely. Being kind to yourself, absolutely. I always want to take more walks, never feel like I have the time, but I can at least go stand outside and take a phone call. And boy, is that refreshing sometimes just to do that. And I think for me personally, I really do need people around me. So I'm just so glad that we finally are able to socially distance and see our friends again, even if we are socially distancing, I guess. But I've just enjoyed more opportunities to get together with people and be wise about everything, but still be able to go out and play some sports or do some other things carefully. But just that really helps to recharge me a lot. And I guess the other thing I would add too, and this comes from our leadership at the top at SEPTA, they really have been encouraging everybody to take their vacation and to take their time and to not put that off, to do it now so that that can help recharge you too.
That's excellent guidance. Yeah, just because you can't take those trips perhaps that you had scheduled to out of the country or long distance, it's a vacation is a vacation, is a vacation. Yeah, very nice. Yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. I once heard somebody say, like, what? You haven't learned a new foreign language during COVID? What? You haven't learned how to cook Italian food? What? You haven't started a little side gig business? What are you doing? And it's like, if you haven't done any of those things, great. All you need to be is yourself during this time, and that is enough. And I just love that thought, because people are like always asking, well, what are you doing? What are you learning? Have you started something? And, you know, just being and being aware of where you are in this time is great. So in a moment, I'm going to turn this over to Trish to hear if we have some questions that perhaps you have typed into chat that you would like to ask one of the panelists, and something that's on your mind, that you've heard some great ideas, some great reflections, and perhaps would like to hear a little bit more. So Trish, how is our chat doing? And do we have something that our audience would like to hear?
We do. We have a couple questions. And Rockey, I'm going to invite you to be part of this if you want to share any of your tips too. So one of the questions that we have is, are there any suggestions on how to manage and support other women at work through emotional and trying times? And I know we kind of touched on that, you know, through different questions, but does anybody have anything that we haven't heard about yet that, you know, might be helpful?
I can say at SEPTA, when Leslie Richards got here, she started a new program called GM Ideas, General Manager Ideas, and there was just an email address, I think, that employees could send in their suggestions to, and then she created a team of people that would read through those suggestions and try to follow up on them. And some of them were about some online yoga that people started, or just some online programming where they would have a speaker come on and talk about just those things, about how we can support each other and help each other. But just getting the employees' ideas, that was enough to start off a lot of this.
Nice.
Anybody else?
I know we did a couple of things. We started a colleague care team, and one of the things that we really put focus on was taking the time to listen, as was mentioned, and really holding space for each other, and not just asking, you know, how you doing, but how are you doing, comma, really, and just pausing and letting that conversation happen. The other thing that people seem to really be appreciative of is we started gratitude cards. So actually having an e-card made up that had just a nice visual of gratitude on it, and being able to send a short message to one another. Sounds so simple, but so effective.
And it really does make a day when somebody sends you a little note that they weren't expecting on gratitude. That's a tremendous idea. Melissa, sounds like you want to share something with us as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, one, I agree with everyone about listening. So critical. Something I will share, I report to a man, and something that was very helpful for me was I was totally stressed out about school starting, right? I have two school-age children, and just my director saying, it's okay, whatever you need, you know, we'll figure it out, but do what you need to do in order to, you know, for your own sanity. And that was so helpful for me. And then to Rockey's point, there are so many articles, I'll see if I can find one to send, that give like lists of questions that you can ask during team meetings or in one-on-ones outside of just how you're doing. So similar, you were saying, Rockey, like we say that, but really kind of go more into depth. And what I've been doing in team meetings is I find one each week to ask the team that's a little bit more in depth than how you're doing, just to really dial into how the staff is doing as well.
In addition to everything everyone has said, I just think that for me, I've thought about at the end of my day, you know, I wait until my employees will leave, and I make sure that I I know we don't, you know, see everyone right now face to face, if we're maybe virtual or have the opportunity to talk to everyone. But, you know, for me, I keep saying I want to make sure that everyone had a good day and that they have an opportunity to talk if they need that. And, you know, I work with a lot of college-aged females and males, but the females, you know, you can always tell when they need an extra conversation or if there's something on their mind. And so just being able to wrap up the day together in some capacity has helped, I think, in a big way, so that everyone feels heard and is listened to.
That's fantastic. We'll do one more question from Jenna. Jenna, who was also very instrumental in bringing this event together today. How are you improving employee morale during this time? Is anybody working on that?
For us, we're back in person. So, we've really been, things look different. Everyone has masks on, and we're, trying to stay as distant from each other as possible. But from the beginning of being back together, I've said we have to have fun, and we have to find a way to have fun and be silly and just enjoy each other's company, and I think just reminding everyone each day to have fun, not only for the people that they're serving here in my organization, but for themselves, and encouraging everyone to take that time just to enjoy their day. And it might be small, but I think it definitely helps boost morale and sees everyone have a little bit of a smile under their mask, instead of, not enjoying being here at work.
I would say similar to Aimee-Kate, something that we did as a department that was helpful when we all transitioned was we started to our first couple team meetings. We made them pretty fun. So, and we allowed the team to own it. So we had everybody submit selfies or submit like their favorite part of the house that they like to be in during this time, but something where people got to be able to share. A colleague of mine gave a suggestion that was amazing, which was adult show and tell. So everyone got to share something that, meant something to them and why and how. So this is such a tough time right now, and we're expecting people to show up to work and be great, and just being very intentional about, allowing people to share and being it seems weird, but being intentional about having some fun at work and doing something where people get to own it. But I think that the more that people get to own it, so similar to, I think it was Pam talked about the suggestion box, when people see that their ideas actually come to life and they feel some investment in it is helpful as well.
Yeah, I would just go back to the Zoom again. I think we had planned a baby shower, and of course COVID came and no one was at work. So we ended up doing a virtual baby shower and everyone dressed up, and we had something delivered to the mom to be. So I think that did a lot. We also had a toot the horn one day, and I guess all the trains and buses and trolleys, they all tooted their horn at 3 o'clock, and we covered that with the press and everything. So I think that helped get a lot of our employees pumped up and everything, but it's challenging. So I appreciate all these ideas that we heard.
Yeah, and the teams that I've worked with, also a lot of the show and tell. It's been amazing by doing these Zoom meetings, how much you get to learn about your coworkers and your teams now from just looking at, that's an interesting picture. What is that thing off to the left of your shoulder? And being able to ask questions. And it's sort of a glimpse into their personal world and the things, the icons and the little mementos that mean so much to them, and be able to ask, what is that and why is that meaningful to you? And so I think just people, it's by being able to explore that, it's building a different level of trust within the teams, and which we all know trust is a great enabler of engagement. And so that's been a real benefit.
Well, we're coming just up to an hour, and I want to thank everybody for their time this afternoon. This has been amazing. To have these 4 phenomenal women on this call today, and for me just to sit and listen, to be recharged and refreshed with the ideas and just the authenticity of everything. I cannot thank you enough for sharing all of the information with us, and being so open and honest and raw with your with what has been happening. And you really have made me feel refreshed, and it's so hard right now, but we are so grateful for everything that you're doing and that you've done for us today. This Women in Leadership event has been amazing. I'm starting to like the virtual, to be able to sit here and, we don't have to now jump in our cars and race back to work. It's just a little bit nice. We can kind of just take a minute, I'll just find the positive, we can take a minute, take a deep breath, and before we get back to work instead of racing and sweating in the car like I would be. So thank you. Thank you for all being here with us this afternoon. Rockey, you are an amazing facilitator. I've learned so much today. You've kept the conversation going. Melissa, Aimee-Kate, Pam, I know you are all so busy and, you know, putting this into your schedule. I hope you can take a little bit of time after this before your next meeting. Time for you, because being on all the time is hard. So thank you. And I want to thank our sponsors for believing in us and that we could pull off a virtual event like this. If you're interested in seeing your name up here as well, just let Jacqueline know. But again, I want to thank Independence Blue Cross, SAP, Mainline Today, AmeriHealth Caritas, Bars, Gowie, Amon and Foltz, Franklin Mint Federal Credit Union, WSFS Bank, Trinity Health, the Mercy Fitzgerald Campus, Mercy Home Health, Mercy Life, TD Bank, and Crozier Keystone Health System. I'll point out that Jacqueline Miley has put the program book in the chat section. So you can see, if you haven't clicked on it already, you'll see more bios, more information about our wonderful panelists, as well as more sponsors and information about the Chamber. If you're new to the Chamber and this is your first Chamber event, please stay connected with us, follow us on social media, or sign up for our email blast. We will have another one of these events shortly. And we hope that you found some wisdom today that you didn't have before, and you were able to take a minute for yourself to kind of renew and recharge, because none of us thought we would be here this long, and we're not, there's no end in sight. So being positive and staying motivated is helpful to all of us. So hopefully you can stay connected with us and we can get through this together. Thank you all and have a great day.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Bye.